Sonic Adventure 2 is an interesting game. Although personally I prefer the first Sonic Adventure game, there's a lot of people out there that think that Sonic Adventure 2 is the better game, as well as those who think that it ruined the entire series, but we're not going to focus on them. Honestly, I can see why people like this game. It does everything on a much larger scale than the previous Sonic games. It's got a big story, big stakes, big levels, and for some reason some really big grounded mechs piloted by people who can typically fly. I've wanted to make a video on SA2 for a really long time, but what I wanted to talk about kept changing. At first I wanted to just talk about kind of the visual differences between the Dreamcast and all future ports. Then it kind of evolved into this idea that maybe I wanted to talk about the plot of the game, and then it kind of turned into me wanting to talk about more of the gameplay of the game, and then so instead of making all these little videos, I decided that I'm gonna kind of tackle everything in one big video, starting with the overall plot, moving on to things like the levels, the characters, the bosses. I've even got an impartial third party who's never played this game before, who I have forced to at least go through the hero part of the game that I'm looking forward to. Then I'll talk a little bit on controls, a little bit on the graphical differences, and at the end of the day I just want to see if this is genuinely a good game, or if a lot of people are looking at it through nostalgia goggles. So when starting this game, you're given two options between the hero story and the edgy story, and like with any English book, we're going to be looking at these stories from left to right, which means that we'll get to the dark story a little later, but for now we're going to focus on our boy in blue. Fur. SA2's plot has probably been my favorite out of any Sonic game ever, because Sonic has been apprehended by the military, who are called Gun in Sonic's world. And it only gets more wild from here. Sonic takes out everybody on board the helicopter and then busts out, makes a quip about the lack of in-flight air food, and then tears off a piece of this helicopter before diving into the streets below, where he rides this piece of a helicopter like a snowboard through the city streets. He races across a San Francisco inspired level, and it ends with him narrowly avoiding a giant gun transport that chases him down. Pretty shortly after this, Sonic takes on this big old mech called F6T Bigfoot. It's this gun mech that's been sent after him to apprehend him, but of course, it's no match for Sonic, who manages to take him down with ease. After meeting Bigfoot, Sonic meets our newest antagonist in this series, which is Shadow the Edgy Hedgy, who just starts monologuing about his Chaos Emerald. Sonic then realizes why the military is after him, and that's because they're racist, and they think that all hedgehogs look the same. Sonic rushes towards Shadow, and Shadow exclaims, "Chaos Control," and oh my god, if this isn't the longest teleportation scene I have ever witnessed. I mean, Sonic isn't that far away, and isn't he supposed to be the fastest thing alive? So what's going on? Did time slow down here or something? Anyway, Shadow ends up teleporting past Sonic and then up a building where he just kind of mumbles that his name is Shadow and that he's the ultimate life form, which yes, we need more positivity like that in the world, and why not go big and just exclaim to the world that you're the ultimate life form? Then Shadow just kind of warps away, and I guess he warps in the military because suddenly Sonic is surrounded by a ton of gun soldiers who again manage to apprehend him. Now at this point we meet another member of our team, which I'm gonna be honest, shouldn't be considered a member of the hero team because he spends about 90% of his time on his own separate adventure away from everybody else. Of course, I'm talking about Knuckles, the guy who doesn't chuckle. He's fighting with another newcomer to this game, which is Rouge the Bat. They're fighting over his Master Emerald, with her proclaiming that all the world's gems should belong to her, and while they're arguing, Eggman just kinda sneaks into the back and scoops up the Master Emerald. Luckily though, this emerald is clearly made of glass because Knuckles manages to shatter it to pieces, and that's basically what he's going to be collecting over the course of this game in order to reassemble the Master Emerald. So that's kind of what I mean by he shouldn't be a part of this team. None of his quest has anything to do with Sonic or really anything related to any of the events to come. Knuckles just wants to reassemble his giant rock and then go hang out in the desert with it, which honestly that is a vibe that I am totally down for. During this time, Sonic finds himself imprisoned, and so of course his friend Tails takes the only reasonable course of action, which is to attempt to break Sonic out of a military prison in the middle of the ocean. It's on this prison base that Tails sees Eggman in a mech harassing Amy, who somehow got to the island as well. This prompts Tails to turn his airplane into a mech, because I guess that's a thing he can do. And then he fights Eggman off away from Amy, and Amy basically gives us no explanation as to how she got here, other than the fact, that she's here to save Sonic, and Tails is again, cue laugh track. But like for real, Tails needed a plane to get here. I'm assuming that Eggman flew here and then put on his really big legs, but like Amy just showed up. Okay, I guess we're gonna go with it. Back on track, Amy and Tails manage to get their way into the prison base where they find Sonic's cell, and it's here that Amy tries to force Sonic into a relationship in exchange for his freedom, which, you know, cue laugh track again. Oh, and by the way, there's a bunch of writing on the walls in Sonic's cell, but like Sonic just zooms out of there before he can even explain if it was him or somebody else who wrote these. I guess we'll just have to wait till later. A now free Sonic escapes the island and makes his way to a nearby jungle, where he once again encounters Shadow in what might be my absolutely favorite voiceover encounter in this entire game. I think it's really worth listening to this just to get an idea of how bad the voice acting can sometimes be in this game, and listen to them talk over each other right now.
Whew. So far, so good. Hey, that's...
That blue hedgehog again, of all places.
I found you, Faker.
Faker? I think you're the fake hedgehog around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Huh. You're not even good enough to be
I'll
my
make you eat those words.
Now, after this encounter, Sonic beats up Shadow, only to learn that Shadow and Eggman are committing ecological terrorism, as they're about to blow up this island, which means that Sonic needs to boogie on out of here if he's gonna get out with his life. And I mean, he's the fastest thing alive, so of course he does, or at least we assume he does, because it just cuts straight to an FMV of the island blowing up once you finish the level. And we do see Tails flying away inside of a ship, so hopefully Sonic managed to get on board before the island got blown up. But it's gonna be a second until we find out, because the next level follows our red treasure hunter Knuckles. There's no story for Knuckles here. Somehow he went from the desert to Pumpkin Hill. I love the aesthetic of this place. Knuckles says it looks spooky. It's got one of the best songs that plays, and that's about it. And so while Knuckles is digging in the dirt, Eggman hacks all of the TVs in the world and then threatens all the humans, or Mobians. I mean, they never really make it clear, but this place isn't Earth, I don't think. Anyways, he does this by revealing that a nearby space rock actually has a gigantic robotic version of his face inside of it, and out of the nose he fires a giant blue laser towards the moon, which causes it to blow up. And I guess like RIP the tides now. Thanks, Eggman. Now he gives the president 24 hours to give in to his demands, or else the world will be the next to be destroyed. Oh look, Sonic's alive. Well, that's good news. Sonic deduces that Eggman used the Chaos Emeralds to blow up the moon, and luckily, Tails nonchalantly pulls a Chaos Emerald out of nowhere and explains that he can use this one to track the others. Tails just so happens to have one of the 7 rarest, most powerful rocks in like the world, and this guy acts like he's just pulling out a cell phone and using Find My Phone on it. The cops show up, ready to arrest this trio for good reason, considering that they did just break Sonic out of a military base, and pretty shortly after that, a nearby island blew up, so I mean, even if it's not right, they can probably put 2 and 2 together and assume that those events are related to each other. Sonic, however, is based and tells Tails that he'll beat up the police while Tails goes out and searches for the Chaos Emeralds, and Eggman. Amy is left alone to fend for herself, you know, cue laugh track, because this is an ongoing theme in this story. And during all of this, Tails runs around and blows up the streets, and it's here that we find out that there's a bounty of $1 million on this child's head. Anyway, bet you were wondering what Knuckles was up to, right? Well, Knuckles is in an underground mine looking for shards of the Master Emerald. How is this guy considered part of the team when he hasn't even met up with the rest of the group yet? He's just kind of off doing his own thing, nothing related to the plot. He's just like, gotta collect my shards. Best girl Amy, on the other hand, she definitely got the short end of the stick. Her picture isn't even on the cover of the hero screen, but like she spends her entire time helping them, only to just be forgotten like this. Now, after Knuckles does his mining stuff, we find that Tails and Amy have escaped the police, and they manage to make it to the capital city. Tails can't find the other Chaos Emeralds, which prompts him to think that Eggman must have brought the Chaos Emeralds into outer space, and you know what? I think I could have come up with this solution way sooner than he did. I mean, we just saw a laser go off in space, and it was said that they must have gotten their power from the emeralds. So like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys already knew that these things were in space. I don't know, it did take a genius to figure that one out. Oh, and look, I've been playing this game for an hour now, and Knuckles has just joined the party. Turns out the mine's connected to the city's sewer system, and also in shocking news, Tails has hacked the government and found transcripts between the president and Eggman. So now Tails has decided that he's going to drive after the president's limo so that he can trace the call to Eggman and figure out where Eggman is. Listen, Tails, you're a great guy, really. I mean, legitimately one of my favorite characters, but like, I don't know. I think maybe you're making this a little bit harder than it has to be. You said the emeralds are in space, right? So like, who cares where Eggman is? You know, like car chases are cool. Yes, I agree, but maybe go stop the big giant space laser. I don't know. Now, they might have been able to get to the president faster if they had some way to fly, but it's a shame that they don't. You know, a real shame that they can't fly to the president, say in like some kind of high-speed aircraft, like an airplane or something, but instead they drive there in a car shaped like the mech, so I guess Tails' mech that was once a plane turned into a car now? It's too bad that they only have this car and they don't have a plane. Anyway, whatever. Sonic hops into the limo and crashes a Zoom meeting between Eggman and the president, and Tails is just back there hacking into stuff. What happened to your car, Tails? Where is your car? Is it just driving itself? I don't care. Tails yoinks a floppy disk out of the limo, and that floppy disk tells him that Eggman is in the Space Colony Ark. Wow, who would have guessed that Eggman is in space? Who would have thunk, you know? I swear, this team, just some critical thinking, please. Now I wonder if that Ark is the giant space station with Eggman's face on it, you know, the one that blew up a hole in the moon? Oh, also the president has no bodyguards, which makes this really easy for them to talk to him, but he gets interrupted by a phone call from an agent that's on a top secret mission, but we don't get to learn anything really about this yet because our main characters are gone. You know, because, hey, they need to get into space. So where did they go, you might be asking? Back to the desert, where Knuckles started. Yeah, if you look at that first scene with Knuckles, in the background there's a pyramid. That's where they are right now. Knuckles claims to have seen both Eggman and Rouge go inside of the pyramid, which means that, for now, Knuckles' story will overlap with Sonic's, temporarily at least. Also, Sonic makes the biggest leap as he assumes that there should be a way into outer space from the pyramid. Sonic? Honey, have you ever seen a pyramid? Like, this isn't the History Channel. They aren't spaceships built by aliens. These things are pretty firmly in the ground, built like forever ago. I don't think they're gonna get into space. But anyway, they get into the pyramid, and you'll never guess what they find. Ghosts, and a big robotic golem. Oh, and also a space shuttle that flies them into space through the top of the pyramid. And like, I'm not talking about some goofy looking Eggman space shuttle thing. This is a full-fledged like NASA spaceship thing that Eggman just has inside of a ghost-infested pyramid. Like, listen, I love this game. I love this plot. I know that I'm being very critical on it right now, but this is weird, right? Like really weird, really out there. And if anything though, I think it really just makes me love the game more because of course there's a spaceship inside of a pyramid. Why not? Like this is so much fun. Like seriously, very fun. Anyways, yeah, the team goes through the pyramid, they fight some ghosts, they fight a big golem, and then they go ahead and they just narrowly manage to escape inside of a space shuttle. Now, I don't know who's flying this thing, but once they're in space, they fly like directly into a meteor, which causes all of the Master Emerald shards to go flying out of the ship, which no one but Knuckles seems to care about, which legitimately makes me wonder how important these Master Emerald shards really are, because like literally nobody seems to care about the Master Emerald at all except for Knuckles. Now, somehow the team, minus Knuckles, manages to make it on the Ark, with them rightfully assuming that he left to go on his own story again because, let's be honest, that's pretty on par with the plot so far. Tails does a really big exposition dump, and it reminds me 100% that he's being voiced by a child who doesn't know what he's talking about. It's here that he explains that this is a Bernoulli spherical space colony where something bad happened a really long time ago that caused it to get shut down. What is a Bernoulli spherical space colony? Well, it's literally never explained after this. But here's a little fun fact from me to you, and that's that this is a mistranslation. And Tails actually meant that this is a Bernal sphere, which is a type of space colony that was proposed way back in the 1920s. Bernoulli is another thing that's related to like liquid and water and stuff. I tried to watch a video on it so I could better explain it, but like, I dropped out of physics, so this went like right over my head. Anyway, back to the plot. It turns out that Tails made a fake Chaos Emerald. A fake-os emerald, if you will, and it's got the exact same wavelengths as the real one, whatever that might mean. He then goes on to explain that it'll reverse the energy fields inside of the cannon and blow up the space colony to Kingdom Come. How could this child be so smart that he managed to build, like, a fake magic gem that even a computer can't tell the difference of? I don't know, man, but Tails never gets enough credit, and he is being way too downplayed in modern Sonic games. Now, for some reason, everybody from here has to split up. Tails needs to go to the power supply and Sonic to the control room, I guess to temporarily stop the Ark so that Tails can make the switch. Amy is left alone again, which, you know, cue laugh track because she's been forgotten about again. Once Tails and Sonic are in position, they go to place the fake Chaos Emerald in, only to be interrupted by the nefarious doctor who announces that he needs Sonic to come to him, as he's got Amy held hostage. Cue laugh track. Actually, no, we're not cueing the laugh track this time because things are kind of serious, but I bet you were wondering what Knuckles was up to right now, right? Because the game takes a pause and just takes us away from what's happening over here with this life or death situation, and we get to see Knuckles. He's flying around in space. Knuckles can breathe in space, which, I mean, good for him. Knuckles then fights his busty love interest over top of some lava, and it's kind of like Star Wars Episode 3. Although, unlike Star Wars Episode 3, Knuckles doesn't leave Rouge for dead in the lava. If only Anakin had some big old mommy milkers, maybe things would have been different for the galaxy.
You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!
But yeah, anyways, back to how things are going here. But yeah, with Rouge saved, she shares her shards with Knuckles, which finally allows him to rebuild the Master Emerald. I love how there's supposed to be, you know, like some kind of will they won't they between Knuckles and Rouge, but right after this, and he gets his big old emerald back, Knuckles just bolts away. Knuckles, where you going, you big dummy? You're in space. You can't run back to the desert. Now in the meantime, Sonic rushes back to get Amy in a stage that really just gives me a headache, and then after that, he arrives at the research lab where Amy is held hostage. Now, Eggman has a gun, and I just really want to focus on this for a second because I think it's really weird to see him hold a gun. Like, of all the things I thought I would see, Eggman holding a comically large gun was not one of them. Now, Shadow, on the other hand, I could probably see. Actually, no, we gotta focus on this game. Maybe one day in the future I'll look at that game where he holds really big guns though. Eggman tells Sonic to hand over the Chaos Emerald or he'll shoot Amy, which, like, buck wild, man, maybe calm down a little bit. Luckily though, this is the fake Chaos Emerald that he has, so Eggman would just be doing what the team was already planning. So Sonic goes to give this fake emerald, and he's being all snarky and stuff, but then he's locked inside of a tube, and Eggman exclaims that he knew this emerald was a fake emerald, which leaves Tails like, how did you know? And get this, Eggman is like, I know because you just told me it's fake. So like, did he lock up Sonic on a hunch? Does the dude just want to kill Sonic and doesn't care if, like, he's gonna kill him even with the emerald? Anyways, Eggman also calls Tails Foxboy, which, like, I love. I wish that was said more often because it's ridiculous. Tails does, like, the surprised Pikachu face from the meme, and then Sonic is just yeeted into space. But first, he gives his final farewells to Tails and Amy. But this is all a ruse because these aren't Sonic's final farewells. Because remember, Tails said that the fake Chaos Emerald has the same properties as the real one? So, Sonic see, Sonic do. That is to say that Sonic copies that one time that he saw Sonic use the Chaos Emerald to do Chaos Control, and he teleports himself out with his fake emerald. Or at least we hope that he managed to pull that off, because all we really get to see is the capsule blow up, and then Tails decides to beat up Eggman. Bet you were wondering what Knuckles is up to right now. So the game cuts over to Knuckles, who's just kind of wandering around in space, realizing that, oh snap, there's no way for him to get out of space. And then bam, from a bright beam of light comes Sonic. Nux is obviously a little bit confused considering that he hasn't been around for like any of this, so he doesn't even know that Sonic is like presumed dead right now or anything like that. And then Sonic is like, can't stay around, I need to go slam dunk this Chaos Emerald into the barrel of the cannon to stop it like some Looney Tunes joke. And like, don't question anything that's happening, everything's gonna be good. And Knuckles is like, okay, I guess. Then Sonic runs away. He has a big fight with Shadow on top of a collapsing bridge, and it's really cool. And it would probably be cooler if I could understand anything they were saying to each other in the cutscene before this, but like, listen to this and tell me what you can hear.
You never cease to surprise me, Blue Hedgehog. I thought that capsule you were in exploded in space.
You know, what can I say? I die hard. You actually saved me, you know.
It was a Chaos Emerald, wasn't it? But there's no way you could have activated the Chaos Control using an emerald that's fake. So, there's more to you than just looking like me. What are you, anyway?
What you see is what you get. Just a guy that loves adventure. I'm Sonic the Hedgehog.
I see. But you know, I can't let you live. Your adventuring days are coming to an end.
Who was doing the audio mixing here? Because man, there's so much like this, it is insane. Now with Eggman laying on the floor, probably complaining about how he misses his wife or something, Tails realizes that he actually managed to beat Eggman just before Eggman could start the cannon, except, Eggman has the Chaos Emerald, but even though he tries to activate it, the cannon still blows up, and that's because Sonic is out there because he managed to slam dunk an emerald inside of the nose hole. And that's it. Well, at least for the first part of the story, because now we need to go look at the dark part of the story. So get comfy because we're going to do all of this again from the top. The dark story starts with Eggman assaulting a remote prison. It's here that he finds what his grandfather was working on for all these years, which has been locked away, and that's Shadow. His grandpa built Shadow. Eggman's grandpa made the first ever Sonic OC. Shadow is kind of weird, actually, because it seems to me like he thinks that he's a genie because he tells Eggman that he'll grant him one wish. Then to demonstrate his power, he hovers in the air, which is honestly a bit anticlimactic, but I bet you decades ago when Shadow was created, this was a pretty cool trick. Then he just kind of teleports away before accepting any kind of wish from Eggman. Shadow then fights an enemy that looks suspiciously like Bigfoot, but this isn't Bigfoot, this is Hotshot. I have no idea what the difference is, but with Hotshot defeated, Eggman realizes that Shadow is a top secret weapon, and now he wants his wish. Except Shadow wants Chaos Emeralds in return for wishes, and I'm not sure if something can be considered a wish if it's transactional like that, but I mean, whatever, because Shadow doesn't have time to explain. He says that he'll just meet Eggman on the Space Colony arc. Anyway, here's Rouge. Like Knuckles, she's basically got a plot of her own, and I won't spend too much time going over what we've already seen, but like you remember, she's trying to get the Master Emerald. Things get hot and heavy because they are in a desert, which is hot, and they're dealing with this really big emerald, and big emeralds carry a lot of big weight, therefore it is heavy. Eggman tries to steal this hot, heavy action from the two of them, and Knuckles breaks it again, leaving Rouge to search for shards in the Oasis. And yeah, like Knuckles, she is a treasure hunter trying to collect the different shards as well. Eggman goes to his quote-unquote hidden base, which is that pyramid that I'm sure we all remember, and I'm not sure if you can technically call this a hidden base when it's pretty blatantly covered in like Eggman designs and stuff. Also, on top of that, like, it's massive. It's a big pyramid. It's not that well hidden, I don't think, anyways. Once in his base, Eggman decides to go check out what's going on in the Space Colony arc. But first, he decides that he's gonna watch the news, and he just kind of scratches his bum. It's a fun animation. I don't know why they did it, but sure. On the news, Eggman learns that there was a break-in at a bank where the only thing that was stolen was a Chaos Emerald. Eyewitnesses saw this clearly not Sonic character, but they're, like the police, a bunch of racists, and they think that Sonic and Shadow look the same. Therefore, that's how Sonic was framed for this crime that he didn't commit. Eggman, on top of being a feminist, doesn't actually see all hedgehogs as the same, and he recognizes this edgy hedgie as his genie. Now we cut over to Shadow, who's being chased by the police, and he has this brief PTSD flashback to Maria, a girl who wants Shadow to do something for her. She says sayonara and then yeets him into space. Shadow says that he hasn't forgotten her, and he promises to get revenge before he slides down a San Francisco bridge and flees from the police, leaving Sonic to be arrested. Sonic and Shadow then later meet at that same scene where Sonic had fought Bigfoot, and you know how it goes because we saw this before, so we can do a little bit of fast forward. So, in an actual turn of events, Rouge is kind of interesting, unlike Knuckles. See, like Knuckles, the game hard cuts to her, and she's off on her own adventure, but unlike Knuckles, she actually has some kind of plot and interesting development as the story moves on, which, who would have guessed? She basically radios someone and explains that she's arrived at Eggman's base and she's searching for keys to get in, so it sounds like Rouge might be more than meets the eye and maybe is a bit more of a spy than a bad person. That's kind of cool. Anyways, Rouge gets in and finds that there's a teleporter in the lab and its destination has been set to the Space Colony arc. So Rouge teleports after them to solve this mystery. And I just want to go back to this and ask, why does Eggman have a NASA spaceship inside of his Space Colony arc if he has a teleporter that can take him anywhere? It doesn't make sense. I love it, but it doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, Eggman is inside of the Space Colony arc, and he's looking for the control room to meet with Shadow. Eggman walks through a ton of dark hallways, and eventually he ends up in this funky room where he meets Shadow, and Shadow shows off the achievement made by Eggman's grandfather, Gerald. He goes on to explain that the ark was once a space colony, but it was also used as a secret research facility to build weapons of mass destruction, and it turns out it's strong enough to blow up an entire planet, like a little Death Star. But of course, it needs Chaos Emeralds to be charged. Eggman is of course down for world domination, but he gets interrupted by a bat with so much bust that her chest clips through her hands as she hangs from the ceiling. Rouge flies down from the ceiling and suggests that they make a deal. Rouge wants a Master Emerald tracking radar, and in return, she'll hunt down the remaining Chaos Emeralds for Eggman. She then introduces herself because, yeah, no one has actually met her yet, and I guess no one is in any position to doubt Rouge's intentions, considering that Eggman and Shadow literally just met yesterday. So remember when Sonic had to escape that exploding island? Well, here's your explanation as to why Eggman blew up that island. Basically, there's a secret base in the jungle that's holding some Chaos Emeralds. And that means it's heist time, baby. So the plan basically is that Eggman assaults the prison base that Sonic is on inside of the middle of the ocean to cause a distraction for Rouge so that she can sneak into the other base to go get the Chaos Emeralds. Meanwhile, while all of this is happening, Shadow is going to set up explosives all around the island that are going to go off in 30 minutes, which will cause such a disruption that the base won't even have a chance to realize that their emeralds are missing before it's too late. Honestly, this doesn't seem like the best thought out plan from a genius, because it kind of seems like Eggman just really wanted to up the stakes with explosions, because why not instead just set up explosives that you can set up remotely after you get the Chaos Emeralds instead of setting up this artificial challenge? But at the same time, I really like these high stakes, so maybe Eggman is onto something. So yeah, it actually becomes this complete coincidence that Eggman happens to be on the military base that Sonic is being held on, because he's here just to blow stuff up, and just so happens to come across Tails, who then gets into a big old fight with him. During this time, Rouge breaks into the other base, steals the emeralds, but before she can get out, she has to fight this enemy called Flying Dog, which is basically Bigfoot or Hotshot minus the big feet. Rouge manages to beat Flying Dog and finds herself trapped in a safe with no other way out, and to further increase tensions, Eggman's bomb timer, which yes, that is what that thing is called, says that there are only 10 minutes until detonation. Shadow, again, has this PTSD flashback as he remembers Maria blinking. I don't actually know what's happening here, but Rouge is also blinking in the current day, and so Shadow goes to save her because she's blinking like Maria. I don't totally follow, if I'm being honest. Shadow runs through the jungle, fights Sonic, and then breaks into the safe, where Rouge and the Emeralds are only seconds away from being destroyed by the explosion, but luckily, Shadow manages to chaos control him out of there and saves the day. I don't care what anyone says. I totally understand right now why Eggman wanted bombs, because this is so much more dramatic and very awesome. A total team building exercise. From here, we have yet another flashback, where Shadow is chatting it up with Maria, who we find out has never been on Earth, and she wonders what life is like down there. Shadow explains that the professor's life purpose was to make people happy through the power of science, which means that Eggman's grandfather is the equivalent of Bill Nye the Science Guy in this universe. Except, of course, in this universe, Bill Nye created Shadow the Hedgehog and weapons of mass destruction, which is actually something that we can't prove that Bill Nye in our universe has never done, and just hidden away from the rest of us. We find that Shadow has a struggle that I myself am dealing with on an almost daily basis, where he doesn't understand anything anymore and he doesn't know why he's here or what his life's purpose is supposed to be. He wonders that maybe the answers are found on Earth, but before the longest flashback in the game can continue, Shadow gets snapped out of it by Rouge, and we find that they're back here in the modern day in the same place where Shadow had found himself talking with Maria all those years ago. Rouge is still surprised that Shadow rescued her because, according to her, that's so unlike him. She says this like she knows who Shadow is, and not like she literally just met this genie hedgehog like last afternoon after breaking into his base. Anyway, Eggman comes in and he says that things are ready to go, even though Rouge reminds them that they only have 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds. But Shadow says that, don't worry, that's enough for a demonstration. And so Eggman appears on TV, and like you remember, he blew up the moon. In the arc, things are pretty awesome, but Shadow says that the cannon is going to need some time to recharge, and that they're going to need the last Chaos Emerald to pull off their big plan. On top of that, the president isn't really paying attention to their threat despite what had happened, and so something kind of fun happens here where Rouge says that she'll track down the last emerald because she knows where it is, and yep, we know it's with Tails, but they actually give a reason for him having it, which is that it actually ties with the previous Sonic Adventure game where Tails saves Station Square at the end of his story. I kind of like this because you could play through this entire game without having played the first Sonic Adventure game, and this would just kind of be a cool throwaway line, but if you played the previous game, this ties into it and it kind of makes this big overarching story and develops a larger world that I think is really rewarding to the players who played the previous game. Just cool stuff. Eggman sends Rouge back to Earth to get the emerald, and with everyone out of the room, Rouge radios her boss to inform her that she doesn't have enough information on whether or not Shadow is the true ultimate life form. Now, get this, you know how Tails drove after the president? Well, Rouge also drives after Tails. And remember how Tails' car was based on his aeroplane, because likely his plane turned into a mech which turned into a car, and that kind of made some convoluted sense? Well, Rouge drives a big phallic-shaped car. And I know it's supposed to look like her head, but with those big round ears at the back and the long cylinder that bulges out for the front wheels, all I can see is the ding-dong car. I've been playing this game for like over a decade, and I've never matured past this part. I'm sorry. Anyways, after driving the sausage mobile for entirely too long, Rouge finally catches up to Tails and wait, what? He's flying? You've got to be kidding me. This guy with his super grounded mech has been able to fly this entire time, but we've just never seen him do it inside of his story except for that one FMV. But like, he was able to fly, so like, why didn't he fly after the president if he's clearly able to do it? Anyways, whatever, with him in the sky, there's no way that Rouge can get him. And Rouge informs Shadow that Tails is inside of his blue plane. And like, who would have guessed that Tails would be flying his signature blue plane that he's been seen in countless times before. Anyways, Shadow can't fly, he can just hover with those shoes. So the plane just kind of zooms by him. He's like, hey doctor, so that plane is flying right towards our secret base. I can't do anything about it. Okay, bye. And Eggman is like, yeah, don't worry about it, Shadow. I can see them on my radar. I don't get it either. How does this make any sense? They do nothing to stop him. I don't understand why this happens, but I love it. This story's so good. It's ridiculous, and it's like charmingly ridiculous. Oh, also, they're in Pumpkin Hill Zone here, but it's daytime, which is kind of cool. Anyways, fast forward a bit, and like we remember, Eggman summons his golem to fight Sonic while the best Eggman theme song plays. Like seriously, the Eggman song here slaps for absolutely no reason. So again, Sonic defeats his golem, and now the golem, all busted up, is fighting against Eggman. I wish Eggman had built some kind of self-destruct in him, because I hate this boss fight. It takes entirely too long, but during this kerfuffle, Sonic and his friends manage to escape in Eggman's NASA ship that he keeps inside of his pyramid. Which again, I know I keep bringing this up every time I talk about it, but why does he have that ship? It doesn't make any sense. Did Eggman build this pyramid out here? Because if he built the pyramid, it is definitely not hidden. That thing is huge. And if he took a pyramid that already existed in the desert and then like retrofitted it for a NASA spaceship, like why? Why? You would have to hollow it out. You would have to like build a whole separate thing so the tip of the pyramid can open. I don't understand, and I don't know why, like of everything that's so ridiculous in this game, why is this what bugs me so much? But it does. And it bugs me in such a weird way because I also think it's just so fantastic. Anyways, back on the Ark, Rouge learns that Sonic and his team have escaped inside of this NASA ship. And Rouge is like, well, I can take care of them, but first, Eggman, I need your password to get on your computer. And Eggman's a boomer, so he just gives his password away to scammers over the telephone. And like, his password is Maria, by the way. Anyways, on the computer, Rouge learns of Project Shadow, the ultimate life form. But wait a minute, that's not the Shadow that we know. And so our Shadow might not be the real Shadow, but he is for sure foreshadowing things to come. Anyway, Rouge boogies out of there and she goes out to find pieces of the Master Emerald in space. Knuckles fights Rouge, and as you remember, there's this whole Ako Tako Star Wars moment. Back on Earth, Eggman is ready to teleport back to the Ark, but his teleporter doesn't take him straight inside of the Ark, and so he's got to fly through some space to get there, and I love this level so much, but more on that later. Eggman has a gun, he has Amy, he eats Sonic into space, he fights Tails, and during all of this, Rouge monologues to herself about how she's gonna steal the emerald for herself, but uh-oh, Shadow is there, and he finally puts two and two together, and he realizes that Rouge the Treasure Hunter is actually the government spy working for the president known as Rouge the Bat. Shadow is a modern-day Sherlock Holmes to have put that together. But then Rouge drops her truth bomb on Shadow and is like, listen up, buddy. This giant lizard that I found is actually Shadow. So what are you then? Anyways, Eggman interrupts all of this to say that he now has the 7th Chaos Emerald and that Sonic is trying to get to the cannon, so someone has to stop him. Shadow gets ready to go and stop him, and Rouge is like, hey, listen, before you go, I just want you to know that maybe you're not Shadow and all of your memories are fake. And like, the poor guy doesn't already have enough existential dread to deal with. But anyways, Shadow goes on to fulfill his promise to Maria. He runs outside, Sonic and Shadow have that cool fight in the outdoors, and then we finally finish the story again. Wrong. We actually have one more story that's unlocked after finishing Hero and Dark, and that is the special last story. So let's go take a look. After you beat both the Hero and the Dark story, you unlock the true ending in the last story. This actually is some of the most fun in the game when it comes to both the plot and the gameplay. The story more or less picks up where the other ones left off, with Eggman in the control room listening to some alarms going off, and all of a sudden his grandfather, Gerald Robotnik, shows up on screen. Now on the bridge, Sonic has returned with Knuckles, and shortly thereafter, Rouge shows up to inform them that, well, things are kind of going sideways, and that the Ark is heading straight towards Earth on a collision course, which will cause both teams to die, as well as the entire planet to be destroyed. Then, on screen, we see Eggman's very insane-looking grandfather show up, and this old dude also shows up on every TV on Earth, much to everyone's despair, and he announces that the Ark has been set to crash on Earth and destroy everything. Why is he doing this, you might ask? Revenge? I don't know, because he doesn't explain it, and we've never really had anything in the plot up until now explaining why this is happening, so revenge, I guess. Luckily, though, we get some exposition in a little bit, because Eggman, I guess, can't read, and he shows up on the bridge to give Rouge the diary of his grandfather. It turns out that Gunn came to the Ark to destroy his research and the ultimate life form. He had no idea what happened to his granddaughter Maria, but her name was amongst those of the people who had died when the Ark was shut down. And now maybe it kind of makes some sense as to why he wants revenge on all of these people who took everything from him and also caused him to, kind of snap in the head. So yeah, Gerald went mad. He ended up making Shadow, and he set up his plan to destroy the world. Here's where things get kind of fun though. The team has to deactivate the Ark before it can crash into the Earth. And of all the people, Eggman is the one who rallies everybody together in one unified plan to shut down the core as a team. From here, the team splits up, with everybody heading off onto their own path to do their own thing. Tails has to destroy some security measures, Eggman helps along with that to destroy another security door from his side, Rouge and Knuckles have to drain some liquid from the core to open the last security door, and then it's all on Sonic to rush through and get to the core. Oh, also Amy has been left behind again, which honestly isn't even funny anymore, it's just predictable. But it's actually a good thing she was left behind, because she finds Shadow, who's just kind of being an edgy boy staring at the Earth as they go to crash towards it. Amy swoops in, and even though Shadow doesn't want any help, she manages to use her kind-hearted nature to sway Shadow into helping them. And in this moment, Shadow is reminded that Maria was a good person who wanted Shadow to help people on the world, before saying sayonara to him. Shadow cries after he realizes that he is in fact good, and he wants to be able to fulfill the wishes that Maria had for him. Now in the core, there's this weird pulsating machine over a replica of the Shrine of the Master Emerald. This machine lets loose a giant biological robot lizard thing called the Bio Lizard, which, get this, that's the prototype of the ultimate life form we saw before. Shadow is the ultimate life form. How, if that's his prototype? What? Anyways, confusing characters aside, Shadow comes in and he goes on to take on his little brother while Sonic and Knuckles deal with the Master Emerald. With the Bio Lizard nearly defeated, Sonic and Knuckles head up to the conveniently placed shrine, and Knuckles gives his Master Emerald a little pep talk. But before they can save the day, the Bio Lizard uses chaos control on itself, because the Bio Lizard is determined for some reason to keep the colony on its crash course, and he has made himself one with the Ark to fulfill that. So now, in a very cool moment, Sonic and Shadow go super with the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and Live and Learn starts to play. I first saw this 10 years ago, and it gave me goosebumps, and man, if it doesn't still give me those today when I'm playing it again. The two Super Hedgehogs head out into space for one final battle against this big old lizard with a giant metal rod up its bum, all while Live and Learn just repeats blaring into your ears. And this is just so much fun. It's so good. What a great way to end the game. Of course, the two managed to beat the big old lizard, but did they do it in time? The Ark is still hurling towards the Earth, and so Sonic and Shadow rush towards it with one last Super Chaos control to try and warp it back into space where it would be safe. They managed to pull this off, but in doing so, Shadow ran out of power and didn't have enough left to get himself back to the Ark, causing him to fall to Earth and presumably die. Sonic is the only one to return to the bridge, and he has to announce to everybody that Shadow sacrificed himself to save the world. It's kind of heavy actually, and it ends with everyone having these cute little chats with each other. They're very cheesy, and I mean like just listen to the one where Eggman is opening his heart to Tails, and Tails is just being a literal child without any kind of mature response towards any of this.
I looked up to my grandfather because of all the great things he accomplished in his life. He was my hero, and I wanted to be a great scientist like him. But did he really mean to destroy us?
I don't know, but what I do know is we all did it together!
It all ends with Sonic saying sayonara to Shadow, and we get this kind of cool end shot of the Ark orbiting Earth as the heroes and Dark Team get ready to leave. Now listen, I love this story. It's cheesy, it's over the top, and quite frankly, it's buck wild at certain moments. But like, it's also a Sonic game, and I'm not coming here expecting a masterpiece in storytelling, and if I'm totally honest, I love this over-the-top presentation. I can definitely see how it might turn people off, especially with, you know, the questionable dialogue and the quality of it all. But when it comes to the overall plot and the story, I think it's pretty solid. Yes, it's silly, but it never really takes itself too seriously. You can tell that the game is having fun, and if you're willing to have fun with it, I think it works really well, you know? Now there are some meh levels in there, but for the most part, all the levels are really fun, and I even found myself just wanting to play through the more painful levels that I didn't enjoy just so I could see the next cutscene. Now on that topic, let's talk about levels. I'm not going to talk about every single stage in this game, because let's be honest, I'm not Zoomzyke, and considering that he's got an entire series where he just talks about Sonic Adventure 2 levels, I think we'd be here literally forever. So mostly I just want to focus on the standout stages, whether they were good or bad, and my overall opinion on kind of each character. So let's start with the speed characters, and the first stage that you're likely going to play is City Escape. I love this stage. I think it does an absolutely wonderful job at teaching you the basics of the game with platforming, as well as some new aspects like the bars that you can swing off of and the rails you can grind on. Metal Harbor is another really good example of a game that I find also does a good job at teaching you certain new things like the light speed dash, and it also does a really good job at just kind of slowly cranking up the difficulty with more bottomless pits. It's a lot of fun to play through. Crazy Gadget also is a really fun gravity switching level with tons of good little shenanigans related to that in it. And all in all, if I'm completely honest, pretty much all of Sonic's levels are pretty fun, with the exception of Final Rush, which is Sonic's last level. Final Rush on paper I think should be really cool. It's all about grinding rails in space, and if you want to be brave, you can try to take these risky shortcuts where you can jump from rail to rail. But man, I can never seem to get Sonic to grind properly. The hitboxes on these rails feel so small that I am constantly missing them, and it makes for just such an unpleasant time when I'm playing this game. Shadow's stages are also fun, but like to kind of a lesser degree. The dark side of the story is kind of like a hard mode in this game, and so like Radical Highway is this San Francisco kind of opposite to City Escape, and it's a lot of fun, you know, and there's some very impressive stuff you can do in the game, but it feels less fast and kind of less fluid than a lot of Sonic's levels, which is kind of this ongoing theme with a lot of Shadow stages, where I feel like you're often abruptly stopped to like deal with enemies or something like that to make the level artificially harder, but it makes it a little bit less fun. They're still really good, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't enjoy Shadow's levels more than Sonic's. And if anything, I think Sonic's mostly all beat out Shadow, except for Final Chase. Final Chase is probably one of my favorite stages like ever, easily in my top 3 in this game. I love these gravity spinny cylinder things that you run up. This is the first time in my entire life where I had learned about these little shortcut things that you can take if you go off the beaten path. And like, just seriously, Final Chase is this really fun, like 10 out of 10 final stage, where in my opinion, it utilizes everything you've learned so far, and it makes this really fun yet challenging stage that really tests you as a player. I really enjoy it. I think it's a really good time. Treasure hunting, on the other hand, is a bit of a mixed bag. If you don't know how they work, they're basically these open levels where instead of trying to get to the end of the stage, you need to find 3 items. Pumpkin Hill is pretty iconic, and I feel like most people know about it, and I think for good reason. It's probably the best one out of all of these treasure hunting stages. I like the really big open nature of it. It's really fun to explore. It really lends itself well to this type of gameplay. And even like Security Hall, for example, is another standout with Rouge, and that's the one where you have to get the 3 Chaos Emeralds before the timer runs out. And like, I hated this level as a kid, but replaying it now, I really enjoy the additional challenge. And like, similar to Pumpkin Hill, it's this really open level that's like fun to explore and like not too big that it's difficult to do or anything like that. For the most part, that's kind of it for levels I really enjoyed with the treasure hunters. Everything else isn't necessarily bad, but it isn't necessarily great. You know, it kind of falls into that like meh category or like okay category. The only two that I really would say that I dislike is Death Chamber and Mad Space. Death Chamber is like the antithesis to Pumpkin Hill. It's this really claustrophobic level where you're constantly running around these tight hallways. Backtracking because of that is an absolute slog. Everything looks just so samey and like overall just like not a good time. It doesn't lend itself really well to this type of gameplay. And then Mad Space is this Rouge the Bat level that is just like straight up hell. Of all the stages, like this is by far one of my least favorites. It's big, but like big to the extreme, you know? Like it's way too big to the point where it's really annoying to trek around this monster of a stage. It's annoying if you make a platforming mistake because you fall so far and it's so much of a trek to get back. And just overall, I would be happy not replaying this stage. However, in like a really weird twist, in the final stage of the last story where you play as Knuckles and Rouge, it's genuinely like a really good time. And it's done completely different. Instead of hunting for 3 MacGuffins, you're like solving these puzzles in a more objective-oriented levels, and they work really, really well for these two. And overall, these two levels might be like more fun than any of the treasure hunting stages. Overall, the treasure hunting stages aren't bad, but like not great, you know? There's a few really good standouts. I think at the end of the game, it works really well for the characters and like the puzzle solving stuff, and I wish there was more things like that. Overall, don't hate it, don't love it. It sits there, I'll play it, but like it's not as fun as the speed stages. Now, for the last ones, like let's just get this out of the way right away. I hate the mechs. I hated them when I first played this game, I hate them now. The mech stages are so freaking slow. Like the speed stages, you need to get to the end of the level, but unlike the speed stages, almost none of these are fun. Now, they are a little bit different. You have a health bar now, you can hover to kind of get around a little bit better, and you better get used to hearing this ear-piercing high-pitched squeal because you have a gun and that is the noise it makes when you target people. Cosmic Wall is probably my favorite and like the only good mech level because it actually starts to change things up. It's this Eggman level in space where Eggman can propel himself upwards because of the lowered gravity in space, and it's really fun, and I think this really genius way to use the hoverability for something unique and different that really separates it from the speed stages. Other than that though, everything is like not super enjoyable. They're not downright bad or like unplayable, but like I don't know, I kind of groan when I have to play them. If you want an example though of like a bad one, then look no further than the Cannon's Core, which is like the last level, the same one that has Rouge the Bat and Knuckles in it. But the first half of it has you playing as Eggman and Tails, and I hate it. I hate it so much. Like look at this nightmare with Eggman. Eggman, this character who can typically fly but has the stupidest little jump now, and I just need to get up onto this platform, and I want you to feel my pain as you watch me try to get up there. It's not good, you know? Basically all but one mech stage is bad. I like to skip over the mech stages when I can. They're not enjoyable. Like we also talked about, there's a couple of driving instances in this game, and honestly they suck. They control really bad. This isn't Mario Kart you're playing. This isn't even any of the Sonic racing games that you're playing. This is just, it's not fun. It's not enjoyable. Luckily though, they're pretty short and like there's not a ton in the game to the point where like, I don't mind it. It kind of changes up the game. They're not fun, but like not painful, you know? Anyways, with levels out of the way, let's talk about bosses. And if I'm being honest with you, the bosses are very hit or miss. I don't love Bigfoot and all of his clones. They're all pretty easy. They're not bad, but they're not good. They very much so sit in like a middle area. The Egg Golem against Sonic is a boss fight that like genuinely is quite easy, but I think it's pretty fun and I enjoy it. It doesn't overstay its welcome for very long. I like the gimmick of climbing up its back and hitting it in the head, but I hate the Egg Golem fight against Eggman. It's just, it feels really slow. It feels less fun than as Sonic, as you just slowly chip away at his armor. I don't like that falling in the sand is a one-hit KO as any of the mech suits. I know it's because they're heavier, but like, I don't know, it's boring. Like, it's not even bad, it's just boring. King Boom Boo is a ghost that Knuckles at one point has to fight, and he's interesting because I remember him being fun. The gimmick is that, like, you have to dig to get him out of the ground and then punch him. I don't know if it's the Dreamcast version, I don't know if it's because I was emulating it and playing on, like, a weird little portable controller or what. I had the hardest time trying to finish off this guy. Like, I could punch him twice pretty fine, and then the last punch I could not catch up to him, to the point where it made me want to quit the game, but thankfully I managed to get through it. Overall, though, I think the idea of the boss is very fun. I think the beginning of the boss is very fun. I found him to be difficult to deal with later, though. Then there's the boss fights against like other characters, like Sonic against Shadow or Tails against Eggman. They're all pretty meh for the most part. Again, they're not good, they're not bad, they just kind of sit in the middle. They're very button mashy. There's no like real strategy or thinking I find to them. You really just want to hit them as much as you can, and they try to jump as much as they can and hit you, but the AI feels kind of dumb and broken to me. The Bio-Lizard, though, and the Final Hazard, those are fun bosses. The Bio-Lizard is this fun kind of end-of-game challenge. There's some of that, like, early 2000s jank to him that makes him a little bit unfun, but aside from the jank, he's pretty fun. And, like, Final Hazard is a good time. Like, that's a fun final boss. Now, with all of that out of the way, I'm gonna go drink some water because I've been recording this for like, 40 minutes or whatever it is now. And I'm gonna let you listen to my friend Damien, who is also a fellow content creator. He's never really played SA2 much in his life. He's played it a little bit before. And he was nice enough to play through the hero side of the story and kind of give us his take as a newbie in the game.
Sonic the Hedgehog, the iconic blue, chili dog eating, human teeth having speed demon. My name is Damien and I know basically nothing about this series, so let me tell you my thoughts on this iconic game. Picture this. It's an early 2000s Saturday morning. I boot up my GameCube to play Sonic Adventures 2 that my brother and I rented from Blockbuster the night before, and into my eyes and ears pours a new core memory.
Follow me, set me free, trust me and we will escape from the city. I'll make it through.
Unfortunately, I was terrible at video games, so I never made it past the first level. Skip forward 20-something years and here I stand, a new man who has beaten the hero story. Let me start off by saying the music in this game was beyond perfect. How did a Sonic game land such banger tracks? Are all the games like this? Have I been missing out my entire life? I was constantly in awe of how great each level's musical score was and how well it was put together. This, alongside the very, let's call it charming VA, crafted a wonderful casual gaming experience. Speaking of VA, there was so much just fun to everyone's performance, and there was something about the mixing of the VAs that sounded so uniquely special about this era for gaming. It's almost maybe tinny is the word for it. Like it sounded as if every actor recorded all their lines from a payphone because the studio couldn't be bothered to book actual studio time, and I just love that. There are some great moments where it's as if the VAs were almost embarrassed to be saying their lines, and I found that really endearing. Like Shadow's Chaos Control line. Man, I could really feel him looking around hoping no one was watching as he said that, but bless him because that line is just so iconic.
Chaos Control!
Another quirk regarding the overall sound mixing, the characters would very often just talk over each other. I don't know if this was intentional or maybe it's something to do with the PC version I was playing, but every time it happened I just couldn't help but laugh. It was like listening to a middle school play where the actors just so desperately wanted to say their lines and get it over with.
Is everyone alright? We should be landing soon.
The hatch doors are
Don't
open.
sweat it, Knuckles. The only thing in the cargo bay are those
What do you
master
mean, don't
emeralds.
sweat it?
Right?
Land the
Knock
shuttle
it
and
off,
let me
Knuckles.
out.
We're gonna crash this.
As for the moment-to-moment gameplay, I'm not afraid to admit that maybe I'm not the hotshot gamer I thought I was. This game was surprisingly difficult, and I can only assume it was my own lack of skill causing me such grief, because man, I died a lot. It almost feels like games were just harder in general from this era, or I'm just so used to the hand-holding nature of modern gaming that I've lost these gaming instincts. For example, it wasn't immediately clear to me how to spin dash, and in my entire playthrough, I still don't think I could confidently tell you how to do it. Additionally, something you don't see in gaming as much anymore is a dynamic jump. This is where your jump height is determined by how long you hold the A button down. In modern gaming, this just doesn't exist anymore outside of something like Smash, and because of this, I had to fight the first mecha boss so many times until I figured out I could control my jump height. Also, the camera. This archaic monstrosity of a camera. This thing got me killed just as much as the enemies in this game. I was constantly falling to my death because the camera would just do whatever it wanted while I was trying to do the platforming sections. I can't believe we all put up with this insane camera back in the day, but I mean, what choice do we have? During the hero path, we get to play as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, who was always my favorite as a kid. I just love me a really edgy, angry boy. Knuckles' levels were nice changes of pace from the more traditional Sonic levels, so it was fun that they shook things up in this way. He also introduces this, lovely individual, and, well, alright Sonic fans, you win this one. I get it now. I didn't understand the Knuckles daycare thing at all though. Like, was I supposed to hatch these eggs or drink these vials? I genuinely have no idea what this was for. Tails' sections were the ones I liked the least. His little ship design was super cool. There was a very distinct Japanese mecha grit to its overall design that I really appreciated. It gave me a Gundam Wing Cowboy Bebop design vibes, so A+ to the team there. His levels, however, were just not for me. It's like they were just less fun and clunky Sonic levels minus the speed. And now, the main man himself, Sonic Maurice Hedgehog. That one's for you deep cut Sonic folks. His levels, as we all expected, fantastic. The sense of speed you get in this 20-year-old game is super impressive and not what I was expecting. His levels are also the most entertaining of the group as you're constantly trying to make split-second decisions on the fly, which make for really engaging gameplay if you're going for top times. Honestly though, with all that said, if they made a phone game of just the first level over and over, I would play the hell out of that. But anyways, thank you for letting me come on here and talk my nonsense. I've been Damien, and I'm gonna throw it back to Sam. Thanks.
Now, of course, I want to thank Damien so much for his time and all the work that he did playing this game. Be sure to check out his channel, definitely. You can find a link description, I'll add a card and all of that kind of stuff as well. Now, this is something I never really gave much thought to, but the controls in this game are actually kind of weird. And I don't know if weird is the right term as much as they are just kind of like unconventional. Especially now when I find like a lot of platforming games have a pretty like set defined control system to them. SA2 kind of does this thing a little bit differently where the game is more or less played with just two buttons. You have one button that's for jumping and you have one button that's like literally for everything else. And for me, this kind of works in a weird way. Like you know, you press to jump, and then if you want to interact or if you want to light speed dash or if you want to spin dash, it's all with the other button. You know, you light dash if you're standing next to rings and you press the button. If you want to interact with something, you stand next to it and you press the button. And if you want to spin dash, you hold down the button. And it all kind of works for me, but I could definitely see how this could be confusing, especially now, where controls, like, I feel like take real advantage of all the buttons, and I find that this game really did not do that. I think that if you can get past that, it can be really fun. But as somebody who played this game, like, since it came out, I can kind of see where the confusion would lie in. And also, after reading online, I realized that there's a lot of people who have issues with the controls in this game. I think it takes a little bit of practice. I think once you get it, though, it's really not that big of a thing. But the controls, I can definitely see being a little bit jank. Now, graphically, I think for the time this game looks great, and I think there's this kind of little interesting graphical thing that a lot of people know about. So if you didn't realize or you didn't know, the footage that you're watching is coming from the Dreamcast version, or I mean at least it's playing on a Dreamcast emulator. I had actually bought the disc and I wanted to get like the most authentic experience I could on my Dreamcast, and the disc I bought said that it works, but when I got it, it was scratched up to high hell, and I did not want to go buy another one to risk that happening again. I know that I could burn a disc and go through things that way, but I was out of town and I decided that it would just be easier to play it on my tablet, which actually worked super well on my tablet. So why did I choose the Dreamcast version though, if that's the oldest version? Well, in my opinion, it actually looks better. When this game was ported to the GameCube, the lighting and shading and all that was pretty gunked up to the point where the game looks like a lot darker and muddier, especially in certain scenes where things just definitely don't look quite right or like less quality than the Dreamcast version. And then the GameCube version is the one that's been used for all future ports. So like if we look at the Dreamcast version compared to the PC port, like we can see like early on in this prison scene, Sonic has shadows on him from the bars inside of the prison, there's lighting effects going on, and then in the PC port there's nothing and it looks kind of muddy and weird. There's a whole list of the differences online, and there's videos that really go into this like in much further detail than I could, and because of that I don't want to spend too long talking about it right now. But if you think it's interesting, I definitely think it's something really cool to look into. Now, as we're getting to the end of this video, I know that people who know this game are wondering why I haven't really talked about the chows yet. And to put it really simply, that's because I cut them out. I know that people love the chows, I love the Chows personally, and I hope that we see them again in future games. However, we would be here like literally forever if I stopped to talk about them. I think it would take me at least another 30 minutes to go on about them, and I'd really rather do them justice in their own personal video on their own. Just know that the Chows were this really cool secondary thing added to the game where you took care of these little babies. It's surprisingly a lot of fun and really addicting when you get into it, and I think it's really worth talking about in the future. So just know that, like, I think this is a really good thing that adds value to the game. If anything, it's only a plus, and I would have no negatives to talk about with it. Now, when it comes to my final thoughts on this game, is SA2 a good game? Personally, I think it is. I think it stands up pretty well today. I had a lot of fun with this game, and like I said, I think it holds up decently well. Now, I do think, though, you need to be in the right mindset when coming into this. It's an early 2000s 3D platformer, so like, you need to expect that kind of jank that games like this, or Mario Sunshine, or Ty the Tasmanian Tiger had, where like, it's good, but it's not quite as tight and as perfect as it could be, like in today's day with games with like Mario Odyssey or Hat in Time that feel really, really good, you know? On top of that, like the dialogue is goofy, and with like the weird audio mixing, I could see like that being a bit of a turn off. But if you're ready for a fun, goofy time and you don't take this game seriously and you understand that it's not taking itself seriously, I think it could be really fun. So like, as long as you're willing to kind of accept the jank and accept the goofy, I think that this can be really good. It especially helps that speed stages dominate the game. Those are the majority of the levels you play, and they're the most fun stages that you play. Everything else, like I kind of said, isn't necessarily bad, but mostly like varying levels of meh. They're all like tolerable with like a few exceptions here or there, but like they're really in the minority, the ones that are bad. And even for the most part, when I ended up with stages that I didn't like, I still played through them because I thought the story was charming enough that I wanted to see what happened next. And so yeah, like that's kind of where the video is gonna end, with me saying that yeah, I think it's solid, you just need to be in the right mindset. Now, this is the most I've ever talked about SA2 in my entire life, and I want to thank you for watching the video this far along if you can. I think it's super cool. This is definitely a video I've wanted to do for a long time. I've been literally working on this for months as my script just expanded and expanded and expanded, and I really, really want to thank Damien again for the work that he put in making his side of the video. He did that all the way in like August of 2022, I think, so it's been like a long time coming for him, and I apologize for how long it took. It's just, as we can see with the runtime of this video, it went on for so long. It was crazy. If you think that I earned a sub or a like or a comment or anything like that, I would be eternally grateful for that kind of stuff. But of course, don't feel like you have to. At the end of the day, I just hope that you have a good one. Interrupted by the nefarious doctor who announces that he needs Sonic to come. I just realized how stupid that is. Okay, let me restart. Only to be interrupted by the nefarious doctor who announces that he needs Sonic to come. The nefarious doctor needs Sonic to come. Okay, for real. If only Anakin had some big old mom... God, this script is stupid. If only Anakin had some big old mommy Stupid. Because Shadow doesn't have time to explain, he says that he'll just meet I was gonna call him Spaceman. He'll just meet Spaceman. Foreshadowing. Perfect, I love it. Dumb line. It all ends with Sonic saying Sayonara.